Get straight into our program for this evening. Now, our Toastmaster for this evening is going to be Maurice Heidelberg. And he is, getting to be one of the older members of our club now. He's been in Toastmasters here for a bit over a year, right?
Closing in on a year.
Oh, closing in on a year.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
He's getting to be ancient. You know, he's going to be an old timer before we know it. So yeah, and he's an entrepreneur, and we would like to welcome our Toastmaster, Maurice Heidelberg. Leave this up here for you, okay?
Good evening, Toastmasters. At this time, I will review the agenda. We're going to have two speakers tonight. The first one is Keidrick, and the second one is John, or J.R. And before we get to the speeches, we'll just go over the positions of grammarian and timer and all counter. And tonight, our grammarian is going to be Brett.
Yes, sir.
Can you briefly just describe what your duties are?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The duties of the grammarian are basically to count the number of times that each person that speaks uses the word of the day. And the word of the day, by the way, is meme, which is a cultural item in the form of an image, video, phrase, etc. that is spread via the internet and is often altered in a creative or humorous way. So the other things I'll be doing is keeping track of the number of times that people use filler words like awe when they shouldn't do that. And then at the end of the day, I'll give my report.
Okay. Okay, at this time, we'll have our timer give a description of his duties.
Okay, as the timer, I'm supposed to time the prepared speeches as well as the table topics. For the prepared speeches, as you were saying, if it's a 7-minute speech, on 5 you get the green, at 6 minutes you get the amber, at 7 minutes you get the red. On table topics, at 1 minute you get the green, is that correct?
Yes.
1.5 you get the amber, at 2 you get the red. I record everybody's time they spend speaking, and at the end of the meeting, I'll give a report. That's the job of the timer.
And just one more thing to add, you will also time the evaluators.
What time do you have? Okay.
2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes.
2, 2.5, 3, okay.
At this time, do we have a word from the Vice President of Education?
No, nothing yet.
Okay. If there is nothing else, at this time, we'll get to our first speaker. And our first speaker is Keidrick, and the title of his speech is Meal Prep for Dummies. At this time, we'll have Keidrick give his speech.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and guests. People often start the new year with plans to set and achieve certain goals. Has one of your goals been to lose weight or to live a healthier lifestyle? If so, you'll be very interested in what I will be discussing tonight. As you already are aware, the topic of my speech is meal prep for dummies. However, you may not have known the 5 pillars of meal prep, so let's get started. The first pillar is who. Meal prep has typically been associated with athletes and trainers. So, you are no longer the prep star of yesteryear when you once scored 4 touchdowns in a single game at Polk High School. And you know what? That's just fine. Are you a busy parent, always wondering what you're going to serve the family for dinner? If so, meal prep is for you. Athletes and trainers shouldn't be the only ones to benefit from healthy, prepared meals and saving time and money. History has proven to show that we typically make bad or ill-informed decisions when under time constraints. Food is no different. We just make up reasonable excuses as to why we stopped at food cyclists to get the bigger box or Hardee's for the monster thick burger. The second pillar is what. Most people think meal prep is this big scary beast that will attack you. It doesn't have to be. Start simple. Begin your meal prep with just enough ingredients for 2 days of planned meals. As you begin to get comfortable with the process, slowly increase the amount of meals that you prepare. An example of a good starter meal would include some lean protein like chicken or ground turkey. Additionally, you would add some fresh vegetables, perhaps broccoli and bell peppers, and maybe some complex carbs like rice or sweet potatoes. Once you have all your food prepared, measure and store it in Tupperware containers. This makes it easy for you to transport and requires zero thought when deciding what's for lunch or dinner. It also ensures that we are not overeating since we took the time to measure our portions out correctly. The third pillar is where. Right in the comforts of your own home is the best place to do meal prep. You don't need a fancy kitchen with expensive appliances. All you need to do is carve out some time to prepare your shopping list, as well as the time to prepare your meals. During my meal prep, I generally use a pan for whatever protein I'm going to cook, another pan for the veggies if I'm going to broil them, and a simple cutting board and knife. That's it. Nothing too fancy. The fourth pillar is when, as in make time to do it. Personally, I do my meal prep on the weekends, usually Saturday night or early Sunday morning. You should do whatever fits your busy schedule. Remember, food prep is done to save time and money. It should not feel like a burden on you. I recommend blocking out at least 3 to 4 hours to get your shopping done and all meals prepared and stored away depending on what you are cooking on your chosen day. I would also recommend explaining to your significant other what you are doing so they don't think you are just making a big mess in the kitchen. The fifth and final pillar is why. Why do we meal prep? Meal prep allows us to save time since you don't have to spend an hour in the kitchen every day after work. All you have to do is warm up your prepared meal and you are good to go. Meal prep will also allow you to save money since you aren't dining out every day. You can save that $10 that you would normally spend on lunch. After a while, those savings can turn into a nice chunk of change. The final reason to meal prep is because it's fun and easy. It allows you to control what you eat and how it gets prepared. In closing, I hope that I have provided you some useful information when it comes to the art of meal prep. Go home and get started today, and don't forget the 5 W's. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Keidrick, that was real good. Meal prep for dummies. So simple enough for a dummy. Our next speaker would be John Griswold, also known as J.R. And the title of his speech is Guerrilla Warfare, as opposed to Guerrilla Warfare.
Thank you, Maurice. Fellow Toastmasters, people do very strange things when they're bored. I went to college with a lot of very bored people. A little place called Ave Maria University. It was tucked away in the wilds of Florida, about 45 minutes from the nearest town. It was surrounded by nothing but orange groves and lots of alligators. Two of my good friends had a very unique way of alleviating the boredom of being on this campus. Their names were Fred and George. They devised something called the shenanigan. A shenanigan is any fun act of mischief. Some examples include climbing Publix at 3 a.m., or my personal favorite, blasting Elton John's "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" when they see a couple making out by the lake. Fred and George grew up together in New Hampshire. They were cousins, but they might as well have been brothers. Their mothers were very close, and they had the same plot of land growing up. Now, by sophomore year, they decided that their shenanigans needed to go to the next level. So they acquired a banana suit and a gorilla suit. And they started going to university functions, having the banana be chased by the gorilla through crowds. This is all very silly and stupid and fun until, this is all very funny and silly and stupid, and almost everybody thought it was great, with the exception of Filch. Now, Filch was the director of Goretti Hall. As hall director, it's his job to report students and write them up for disciplinary infractions. He wrote up far more students than anybody else did, though. He also had a group of student assistants who worked for him. He had them doing things like taking his own personal trash out for him, even though he worked about 10 feet from the dumpster. And at the end of the semester, he also had them preparing the dorm furniture by scrubbing it with toothbrushes. He had a circle of favorite students who would get various perks from him. For example, if students left their laundry in the dorm laundromat, he would confiscate it and give it to one of his inner circle. One of Filch's favorite events was his mixer. It was when he would get his boys together in his dorm, and they'd meet up with one of the girls' dorms and eat appetizers and dress up nicely in tuxedos and dresses. Well, for one of these events, Fred and George showed up in their banana and gorilla costume. Filch was enraged. He tried to punch the banana passing by, tried to grab the gorilla's mask so you could see who it was, but they were too quick and they got away. Now, if you ever spend time with college boys, you know that the best way to make sure they keep on doing something is to let them know you hate it. This is no exception. It became known on campus that Filch was very angry at them, so they began to play a number of pranks. For example, one morning, Filch woke up to his car and found that it was surrounded with a scattering of banana peels. Then there was the Dorm Wars trophy. Dorm Wars was a fun field day that students would take part in. Dorms would compete, and the winner would take home a big fake golden chalice. Well, Goretti had won last year, and this chalice was on display in Filch's office. It was common practice for dorms to try to steal the chalice during the year that wasn't during the off season. So one night, Fred and George, dressed in their banana and gorilla costumes, rushed into the office and with the collaboration of the student assistant who was on duty then, took the chalice. Filch was livid. He began scouring security footage, trying to find out who these mysterious masked men were. He asked his contacts and tried to acquire their names. The funny thing was, though, he was probably the only person on campus who didn't know. The Ave Maria security chief knew, but didn't care. His boss knew, and also didn't care. And the reason was simple. They hadn't broken any rules. He was the only person who took him seriously. Nevertheless, they began to get worried. You see, they lived in Filch's dorm, and they knew that if Filch found out who they were, he could make their life miserable. They started detecting suspicious questions and awkward glances from him, and they realized it was time to take the heat off. So they hatched a cunning plan. One weekend, their brothers, Charles and Ron, were in town. Now, Charles and Ron had pulled the same kind of stunts that they had when they were in college at Ave Maria before graduating a few years earlier. On this night, Charles and Ron put on the ant and the gorilla suit, and they knocked on Filch's door. Filch answered it. He was eating an apple then. He had an apple in one hand, knife in the other. When he saw his arch enemies in front of him, he dropped the apple, held on the knife, and took off running after them. Now here's the clever part. Fred and George planted themselves in Filch's office so that as he ran past, chasing the ant and gorilla, he would see them in the office calmly eating popcorn. The plan worked perfectly. The one problem was that Filch didn't give up. He kept on chasing them. I watched from my window. They ran and ran, past St. Joseph dorm, past the classrooms, past the library. They circled the oratory. At this point, they ran about a half a mile. Then Filch began to tire. And then I saw it, the getaway car, with its lights dimmed. Ron and Charles saw their window of opportunity. They dashed into the getaway car, and it took off with a screech of tires. And that was the last night that Ant and the gorilla appeared. Shortly thereafter, Fred and George moved to a different dorm. Filch got a new job at a different university. And though the Ant and the gorilla have not appeared for many years on Ave Maria's campus, the students still whisper that should tyranny ever rise again, it will come back. Thank you.
Well done, J.R. At this time, we will go into our table topics. And our table topics master for tonight is Lawrence Crompton.
Good evening, good evening. Although you might know that today is the beginning of the year of the fire monkey. But we're not going to talk about that in our table topics. Because the topic of this meeting is social media, we're going to talk just a little bit about social media. So, one of the interesting things that I found out about social media is there is a lot of trivia or interesting things that are going on in social media. Now, one of the most interesting things that is happening in social media now is that they're finding that young people are beginning to have more interaction with their grandparents through social media. So, this evening, to start our table topics, I wanted to give someone an opportunity to speak about the benefits of social media and the relationship between the various different age groups. Lois, would you like to give a talk tonight? You have your choice. As a guest, you have a choice whether you would like to speak or not.
I gotta do it.
Okay, great.
Let's get rid of my gum.
So, the benefit of social media in interaction between generations, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Okay, let's do it. Do I need to be
You
there?
you can come up here.
Okay, on
Lois.
Okay. My fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to ask you guys to go extremely easy on me because obviously I was not expecting this. So it looks like our topic is social media and the benefits and how we're actually maybe interacting between the generations. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think the first thing that I point out is that obviously, as you mentioned in your example, if you're finding that the younger the younger generation is reaching out more to grandparents, I mean, that's a no-brainer. That is a very obvious benefit, and it's going to, what, maybe bridge family communications, family interactions, and create a better family dynamic, I want to say. And I'm sorry, you're going to have to forgive me. How long am I supposed to do this?
You see a green
1
light.
to 2 minutes.
Until I see, okay, that's fine.
You almost there.
Alrighty, so at any rate, let's go back to talking about the benefits and the generational gaps. I think that one of the other benefits might be is even when we're talking about our days throughout school, maybe even our days when we're interacting with our colleagues and our co-workers, our subordinates, as well as our management staff and those higher ups, that has to be advantageous when we're getting an opportunity through social media to get a little bit more personal, to see a little bit more about the individual and who they really are is what I believe social media actually lends to us in general. And that to me is a very obvious benefit. I think that's a really good way to bridge the gap between the generations. I think it's a good way for the older generation to get a better understanding of what's relevant. I think it's a really good way for the younger generation to know a little bit more about the older generation and maybe some of the things that they've gone through. And maybe it makes the younger generation a little more apt to want to learn and get wiser. I don't know what I'm doing right now, so I'm just gonna say I want this to end, and I want it to end now. So somebody hold up some type of a sign.
You got it.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Very good. Thank you.
39 seconds.
Of course I'd go over,
That's
yeah.
all right, that's okay.
There's never gonna be a risk
Not a
of me
problem.
going under, I want you to know that.
Good. Now, for those of you who don't know, one thing we might have forgot to mention is over on that fireplace, there's a little light. And that is the light that you would look at to see where your timer is.
Okay.
So when it turns yellow, it means you're at
Okay.
the beginning point. When it turns red, you're at the end point. And of course, it goes green in the middle.
Okay.
Okay. Now, bringing up that point, it has also been found that the demographics on your social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, the older generation, the area from 55 to 65 years old, is the largest growth area in social media, which with an increase of 79% since 2012. So that brings us into the next point, which is if the older people are getting more involved in social media, what do you think, Julius, are going to be the implications of an older Facebook? The old-timers Facebook.
Right. Thank you.
A young man like you ought to have some ideas, right?
So, fellow Toastmasters and other guests, Facebook becomes more, you would say, more demographic representative of the general population. There are more old people than any other demographic involved. So it's only logical that older people will get involved because they're spending more time trying to enrich themselves mentally and reaching out to their families. And social media is a good way to stay connected for older people as well as younger people. And you never know, you might see a meme on your Facebook. Some crazy stuff happens. People post all kind of pictures. And I have a Facebook, but I seldom go on it. But I went on it just the other day, and I saw a lot of good-looking people on there. A lot of people I want to get back in contact with, some lost friends. It's a way to just it's a way to stay in contact with your older friends, people you've forgotten about. You see them on Facebook. It gives you an opportunity to reach back out to them. Stay in contact with your grandkids, your loved ones, family and friends. It's an excellent way to just stay connected. And one other thing I think about social media is it's a great outlet for people who don't like to talk. If you don't like to talk, you can say anything you want and be uninterrupted when you speak. So it's a great way to say what you want to say. Show memes all over the place. Mr. Toastmaster.
So it's very interesting. So the media, social media has been growing exponentially over the many years. Right now, there are over almost 700,000 pieces of content shared on Facebook every day or every year. Okay? 3,600 photos on Instagram and over 2,000 check-ins on Foursquare. I'm sorry, that's every minute of every day. Okay? 600, almost 700,000 hits or tweets per minute. That's a lot of people. Now, interestingly enough, they say that 1 out of every 7 minutes that any person spends online, not talking about on your cell phone, but actually on a computer, 1 out of every 7 minutes is spent on Facebook. John, do you think that 1 out of every 7 minutes being on Facebook is a little bit too much? Or do you think that that is an adequate amount?